Supreme Court decision. Explain to everybody as succinctly as possible why the justices told Texas to go jump in the lake.
Well, I don't know if they told him to jump in the lake, but they did say there wasn't sufficient standing. Now, some of us are very perplexed by this. Standing is the right you have basically to argue a case in court. And the unique thing about this case was, unlike all the other dozens and dozens of elections cases filed around the country in various state and federal courts, this one sought the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So there's this very unique rule in our constitutional system. When one state sues another state, the court of original jurisdiction, in other words, the trial court where you take that case, is the Supreme Court. And that just makes sense because you can't try it in one or the other states. The judge perhaps would not be impartial. So you go to the Supreme Court. So Texas used that mechanism, and that's why the two Justices Alito and Thomas indicated in their simple statement that, well, gee whiz, at least the case should have been heard here. We'll deal with the merits later. But because of this, Robert, what it means is that the merits have not yet been dealt with, will never be, apparently, and that's a real problem because it leaves huge question marks hanging over our whole election system.
It was an interesting point or points that you made on your Facebook page this weekend, Congressman Mike Johnson. You said the Supreme Court has opened a Pandoras box here that is setting a precedent that is dangerous for the future of the country.
It is in a number of ways. Look, I made the point on social media before I went out in the woods north of Plain Dealing for 2 days with my boys in a deer stand. I just needed to go off the grid. I led the friend of the court brief, the amicus brief, on behalf of 126 members of the House in support of the effort because we wanted this one critical question to be answered, and it's this one. Among all the immediate consequences of this outcome right now, the Pandoras Box we're talking about is that our brief asked the court to simply affirm the plain meaning of the Constitution's Electors Clause. That's Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. Not just for this current cycle, guys, but for all presidential elections in the future. The Electors Clause deals with the Electoral College and how we elect a president in this country. The clause specifically says that only the state legislatures can set the rules for choosing electors in each state. And what we're saying, that the fear we have, is that now the court's silence is going to suggest to a lot of people it's suddenly okay now, after more than 2 centuries, to play fast and loose with the rules whenever that becomes necessary to win an election. So from here forward, what it means is what happened this year, Robert, and what will happen in the future is that you had individual governors and secretaries of states and other officials, sometimes state judges, even private parties of interest. They changed the rules unilaterally without going to using the framers' careful safeguard of ensuring that only a full body of duly elected representatives of the people in each state can make those critical decisions.
I started to say,
That's a problem going
it's
forward.
no secret that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court changed Pennsylvania law. I don't want to say on a whim, but they overruled their own legislature, right? It's not like they're trying to hide the facts.
Right. Well, that's it. Right. And that's just one example. I mean, it happened in many states where occasioned by COVID or the outcome of the pandemic or whatever the circumstances were this year, some of these folks took advantage of that and they said, well, let's dramatically, for example, expand absentee mail-in balloting, which, wink, wink, is the only kind of voting that doesn't require an ID. Let's do the polling places different. Let's do this and that. Those decisions were made by local elections officials. They were made by the various secretaries of state in the jurisdictions. They were not made by the legislatures themselves. And under our system, that is on its face unconstitutional, and it's a problem going forward.
Mike, the Electoral College meets today. They're obviously going to probably vote to make Joe Biden our president-elect. Do you move on from here? Is it over?
Well, look, there are still some important elections cases pending in the lower courts, and I've made the point over and over, it doesn't matter what party you're in or who you voted for. If you're an American, you ought to be concerned with allowing the legal remedies to play out. Now, yeah, this is an important step in our system. The Electoral College meets. Those results in each of the states that will happen today are not formally certified by the Congress, as we know, until January 6th. So you still have a couple of weeks for all this to play out, and it's still just a little bit early to say. You have to allow the legal right and all those remedies to go through the normal process. And it doesn't matter what party you're in. You ought to be cheering for the system here, and let's see how it works.
Mike, if you're saying that there was widespread fraud or cheating or whatever you want to call it, and now it's opened the door, does that mean Republicans are setting the stage? You're going to cheat, we're going to cheat next time too.
Aaron, this is one of the things that greatly concerns me, okay? I've got well-meaning Republicans and conservatives from around the country contacting me as, one of the leaders in the House. We got to beat them at their own game. Mike, we have to. We're going to have to play dirty. We're going to have to out-cheat them, the other side, whoever did this. That is not who we are, right? Our party stands for the rule of law. We're the ones that are supposed to root out the corruption, not go and try and double down on the game to beat the other side. That's not how it works. And I and others are going to contend for that in the days ahead. We're going to stand for this idea. We have to clean this up. We've got to make sure that these hijinks don't happen again, or else the ultimate threat, the ultimate concern we all have, is that people are going to lose faith in the system itself, and that is a terrible threat in a republic.
Mr. Mike, one more quick question about the process, the legal process, and the Trump folks. Is there a possibility, because the 4 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, that were in the Texas suit, they have Republican-controlled legislatures, and I've seen a lot of stories. Is there a possibility that those legislatures whose responsibility it is to certify the electors in those states, is there any possibility that the legislatures, the Republican-controlled legislatures in those states may not and appoint their own?
It can happen, but it would have to happen theoretically today. So you may see some drama play out in a number of these states. But absent that, the Electoral College will do its thing today. Everyone expects that Joe Biden will hit the 270-plus number, and he'll be the Electoral College will say he's the president, and then it comes down to the House of Representatives to affirm or certify that. There's a process in the Congress for the duly elected representatives there to object to it and have a whole different process. But no one knows yet how this will play out, Robert. I'll just tell you this. Fox News came out with a poll yesterday, and they determined that 68% of Republicans and 36% of all voters in this country believe the election was stolen from Donald Trump. Now, whether it's true or not, we may never know because these cases are not being properly adjudicated. That is a serious problem going forward, that there's huge doubt that lingers in the minds of America's voters, and we're going to have to contend with that in the days ahead.